The most expensive thing about a luxury car is not the purchase price. It is the moment it stops looking new. Not when the engine fails, not when the leather cracks, not when it becomes unreliable. A luxury car can be perfectly engineered, beautifully maintained, fully paid for, and still make its owner feel as though they have fallen behind. That is the trick. Every new model does more than offer a better car. It quietly changes the meaning of the car already sitting on your drive. The grille is sharper, the screen is larger, the badge is placed differently. And overnight, what was once a reward becomes a reminder that somebody else has moved on. But there is a type of wealthy owner who seems strangely untouched by this pressure. Their car may be older, it may be visibly from another generation, yet it is clean, serviced, useful, and kept long after the point at which it could impress anyone. This is not because every old money family drives the same car, they do not. And it is not because quiet wealth hates luxury. It does not. It is because the quietly wealthy often understand something the luxury car market needs you to forget. A car becomes expensive in a completely different way when its job is to be seen. This is the luxury car old money keeps, and why yours may have been chosen for an audience you never consciously agreed to perform for. Chapter 1. The car was designed to make yours feel old. Luxury used to age slowly. A good wool coat could be worn for a decade. A leather bag acquired marks rather than obsolescence. A well-built car was expected to become familiar before it became dated. The modern luxury car market works differently. It does not just sell a transport, it sells a moving definition of current. That definition has to move quickly, because a luxury car is difficult to sell twice in the same emotional form. The first sale is about arrival. The next sale is about distance. Distance from the version you used to want, distance from the people still driving it, distance from the possibility that your success has stopped advancing. Manufacturers understand that a car can be mechanically excellent and psychologically inconvenient at the same time, so the design language is made deliberately legible, not merely better. Different enough to be spotted in a rear-view mirror, the buyer is not necessarily vain for responding to this. Most people are surrounded by visual cues telling them what counts as progress. The uncomfortable question is whether the car is answering a practical need or calming an anxiety the next model has been designed to create. Most changes between one generation and the next are not mechanical revolutions. They are visual announcements, a light bar, a new wheel design, a screen that reaches farther across the dashboard. Details created to be recognized from 20 meters away. That recognition matters because status needs witnesses. A feature has more commercial value when a stranger can immediately tell it is new. And this creates what behavioral economists call a positional race. The value is not only in owning something good, it is in owning something that still sits ahead of what other people have. The problem is obvious once you see it. You can never permanently win a race whose finish line is redesigned every 3 years. So a car that is still comfortable, still safe, still enjoyable and still capable begins to feel insufficient for a reason that has nothing to do with the car itself. It has lost its novelty in public. That is why the luxury car old money keeps is rarely the car trying hardest to announce its date of purchase. It may have been expensive once, it may still be expensive to maintain, but it has already survived the period when it was supposed to make anyone look successful. Keeping it after that point is not automatically a virtue. A neglected car is just a neglected car. But keeping something in excellent condition after its status moment has passed sends a very different message. The owner is choosing function, comfort, and familiarity over the next public update. Chapter 2. Cars become socially old before they become mechanically old. There are 2 ages on every luxury car. The first is mechanical age, mileage, maintenance history, wear, corrosion, reliability. This is the age that actually determines whether a car still deserves to be kept. The second is social age, how long it has been since people stopped noticing it. Social age arrives much faster. It arrives when the car is no longer the latest version, when the design becomes familiar, when the monthly lease offer disappears from advertisements, when a newer dashboard makes your own suddenly feel like an old hotel lobby. For a buyer who wants to be seen, social age can be unbearable. The car is doing less of the work it was bought to do. For a buyer who wanted the car for its interior, its ride, its storage, its quietness, or the way it handles a long drive, social age is almost irrelevant. This is the dividing line, not old versus new, not rich versus poor, but whether the car's value lives mainly in the experience of using it or in the experience of being noticed in it. The quietly wealthy are not immune to wanting beautiful things. They simply tend to be less willing to let strangers decide when a beautiful thing has expired. That is an expensive freedom. It means being able to look at a newer model and feel no personal emergency. It also explains why the quietly wealthy sometimes look less enthusiastic about the things other people assume they should celebrate. A redesigned dashboard may be impressive. A faster version may genuinely be better, but better has to survive a private question. Better for whom? Better during a long drive? Better in bad weather? Better after 5 years? Or better for the 5 seconds when somebody notices it at traffic lights? The second kind of better is not useless. It just fades quickly. And once it fades, the owner is left with a car whose most valuable feature was its ability to be recognized as recent. Chapter 3. The new car turns every arrival into a financial statement. A very new luxury car introduces a number into every room before you speak. Nobody needs to know the exact price. The point is that the object invites the calculation. What must they earn? Is it financed? Is it leased? Is that the newest one? Did they just get promoted? Are they doing better than last year? The car becomes an open tab in other people's minds. This is why visible status purchases are rarely only purchases. They are disclosures. They tell people which categories you care about, which comparison group you are trying to enter, and how urgently you need that entry to be recognized. An older luxury car can be just as comfortable, just as beautifully made, and in some cases more expensive to keep than a new one. But it is harder to price at a glance. That uncertainty is useful. It gives the owner privacy. Quiet wealth often spends generously in places that do not produce an instant public figure. A better roof, a service contract, a carefully restored interior, time saved, a peaceful home, competent help, a long-standing relationship with a specialist. None of these things make a clean announcement from a car park. And that is exactly the point. The luxury car old money keeps does not need to look cheap. It needs to stop behaving like a press release. There is a useful distinction here. Discretion is not camouflage. It is not choosing poor quality, so nobody suspects you can afford more. It is choosing an object whose quality reveals itself slowly, mostly to the person using it. The ride is quieter. The seat is better after 2 hours. The door closes with less effort. The maintenance is done before it becomes a drama. These are real luxuries, but they do not demand that every stranger understand them. That is the kind of ownership the title is pointing toward, not performative modesty. Private standards. Chapter 4. Maintenance is private. Upgrading is public. There is a difference between preserving an object and replacing it. Preserving asks, is this still good? Is it safe? Is it well made? Does it still do its job better than most alternatives? Replacing asks a different question. Has the world moved on enough that keeping this makes me look behind? One question is about use. The other is about social timing. Maintenance is almost invisible by design. A new suspension component does not announce itself. A proper service does not appear in photographs. New tyres do not create a new identity. Even a major repair can leave the car looking exactly as it did before. Upgrading produces the opposite effect. It gives the owner a visible before and after. It creates a moment of recognition. That recognition is often what people mean when they say they deserve an upgrade, not better transport, a new social chapter. There is nothing immoral about wanting one. The problem begins when every private success has to be converted into a public object. A raise becomes a bigger car, a good year becomes a newer car, a promotion becomes a louder car. Soon, the car is no longer a possession. It is a timetable. Every visible improvement creates the expectation of another. The old money instinct at its best is to resist turning every gain into evidence, to improve the thing itself before improving the story people can tell about it. This is where maintenance becomes a form of discipline. It requires planning before something breaks, patience when the repair is not glamorous, and enough detachment to spend money on a result that will be almost invisible. Nobody applauds a properly maintained cooling system. Nobody notices a fresh set of tyres unless they fail to be there when needed. A service history is not exciting content. Yet these are the costs that make an object dependable instead of merely impressive. The contrast matters because status spending is often rewarded immediately, while maintenance is rewarded gradually. One creates a moment, the other creates a decade. Quiet wealth tends to prefer the decade. Chapter 5. The best luxury cars become settled objects. There is a stage in an object's life when it stops looking recently acquired and starts looking established. A new luxury car looks like an event. An older, immaculate one can look like part of the owner's environment. It belongs there. It no longer asks to be admired. This is what makes a car settled. It has escaped the first owner performance. It is no longer saying, "Look what happened to me." It is simply doing its work. The same pattern appears everywhere in quiet wealth. A dining table that has been refinished rather than replaced, a house with an unfashionable kitchen that works perfectly, shoes resoled before they become unwearable, a watch with an old repair receipt rather than a new presentation box. None of these objects are impressive because they are old. They are impressive because they were good enough to deserve care. That is a different relationship with luxury. The object is not there to create a spike of attention. It is there to make ordinary life better for a long time. And this is why the old money car is not a particular model. It is a category of ownership. It is the car chosen long enough ago that its owner has had time to prove they did not need to trade it in just to remain visible. This does not mean never replacing anything. There is no intelligence in forcing an unsafe, unreliable, or unsuitable car to stay in service because it looks principled. Quiet wealth is not stubbornness dressed up as taste. It is the ability to replace something when the object has stopped serving its purpose, not when the owner has become nervous about what it says. That difference sounds small, but it changes the whole decision. One is governed by use, the other is governed by an audience. Chapter 6. The real cost is the replacement pressure. The financial cost of changing cars is easy to understand. Payments, depreciation, insurance, fees, and the gap between what something is worth and what the next thing costs. The psychological cost is harder to see. Every status market creates anxiety by making ownership temporary. The car is not allowed to remain a good car. It must become either a current car or an old one. The buyer is pushed to update, not because the product has failed, but because the comparison has changed. This is the same machinery behind seasonal wardrobes, annual phones, redesigned kitchens, and the constant pressure to make a life look freshly upgraded. Behavioral economists call this the hedonic treadmill. What feels exceptional becomes normal very quickly. But status adds a harsher layer. Once the exceptional thing becomes normal to you, it can start feeling ordinary to everyone else as well. So the next purchase promises not just pleasure, but restoration. It promises to make you visible again. The quietly wealthy person who keeps the car has not necessarily rejected luxury. They have rejected the requirement to renew their identity every time a manufacturer changes the headlights. That is the edge in this subject. The car market does not merely sell better cars, it sells relief from the fear of being left behind, and then rebuilds that fear on schedule. This is why a good car purchase can feel strangely disappointing so soon after it happens. There is excitement, relief, a brief sense that life is in order. Then attention returns to normal. The car becomes part of the background. The owner may start scanning for the next version, not because the first choice was wrong, but because the feeling attached to it was never designed to last. The more a purchase has been asked to fix socially, the faster it tends to disappoint privately. A car can make commuting easier, it can make a journey calmer, it can be beautifully designed, but it cannot permanently settle the question of whether other people think you are doing well. Chapter 7. The car they keep is the one that no longer needs an audience. There is one final misunderstanding about quiet wealth. It is not about pretending not to care. The interior can still be excellent. The ride can still be quiet. The engineering can still be expensive. The owner may have chosen the car precisely because it is better. What changes is the direction of the value. The value moves inward, away from the stranger on the pavement, away from the person looking through the restaurant window, away from the imagined audience calculating what your life must cost. That is why the luxury car old money keeps is often invisible in the only way that matters. It no longer gives people an easy way to estimate its owner. It could be older, it could be newer, but deliberately understated. It could be a car kept immaculate for 15 years, or a newer one ordered without the parts designed to shout. There is no universal badge, no single model, no inherited rulebook. There is only the pattern. The pattern is easy to recognize once you stop searching for a badge. The object is often kept past the point of maximum attention, maintained rather than refreshed, and chosen for qualities that do not translate well into a photograph. It is owned with less explanation. There is no need to defend why it is not newer, louder, or more expensive looking. The owner has stopped treating the car as a referendum on their life. That may be the rarest form of luxury, not owning the thing that gets the most attention, but owning something good without needing attention to complete the purchase. Choose what works, keep what is good, repair what deserves repair, and refuse to let a release calendar tell you when your life has become inadequate. That is the part people miss when they look at an older luxury car and assume its owner simply has not upgraded yet. Sometimes they have not upgraded because they cannot, but sometimes they have not upgraded because they can, and because the car they have already does the one thing the next model cannot give them. It lets them arrive without making an announcement, and that is the luxury yours may have been chosen to replace. The useful question is not whether your car is new, old, expensive, or modest. It is this: if nobody could see it, would you still have chosen it? If the answer is yes, you bought a car. If the answer is no, you may have bought an audience.